I see you and me up there, honey. Yeah. And even when you were a little baby. And there's, oh my God, everybody's upstairs.
You ready?
Yes.
Okay.
My name is Dr. Stanford Griffith. I'm a clinical psychologist. Okay. Alzheimer's disease is a a neurobiological, neuropsychological condition. Okay. It's basically, and I say very basically because I am not the expert on this, but it's a deterioration of brain cells that impairs cognitive functioning, emotional functioning, and at some points physical functioning. And dementia is a milder form of this sort of biological brain cell deterioration. That's a very difficult question to answer because it really varies in terms of who the family is and how connected they are. So, for instance, if the family member who's identified as having Alzheimer's is sort of the authority in the family, it's a lot more difficult at times for somebody who's subordinate generally to them to raise questions or to challenge them or to criticize or correct. Okay, it's easier often when there's some other authority in the family who that person can and does sort of listen to. So it varies from family to family. All right. Typically, one of the other signs of Alzheimer's is that it's what we call ego syntonic, meaning that the person is not really aware often that there are problems, or if they are, they don't want to acknowledge that they're problems.
You know you have Alzheimer's.
Alzheimer's.
You remember when Dan and Dan had Alzheimer's?
I don't have it.
What do you have?
I have what I call to be a certain amount of stuff that's why that's sitting up there like that.
So, but I know sometimes you have a hard time remembering things. And do the pictures help you remember stuff?
No.
Typically, I will get a call from family members who have a concern of a family member who has lost some of their cognitive skills, okay? Confusion, memory loss, affective, which is sort of mood instability, often difficulty with directions. I mean, it's part of the confusion with getting lost, not being able to do some of the things in an effective, efficient way that they had done previously. And it's a progressive illness, so generally speaking, things progress to from stage 1 to stage 3 or stage 4. Usually, the beginning stages, you might see some mild impairments, and it's hard sometimes to distinguish, or what we call make a differential diagnosis between a dementia or Alzheimer's dementia, which is, they're two different, and sometimes depression. Sometimes people who are depressed present with a similar symptom picture, meaning there can be some confusing, some memory loss, some mood instability, etc.
I guess the hardest part is probably watching the slow deterioration. You know, over the past year and a half that I've been off the job, you know, I've seen how the condition is progressing, you know, and it's, you know, there's a lot of pain. I've tried to adjust to it because having had the experience with, you know, with her mother, but it's the same, but it's very different, you know. So it's painful because you are watching a person lose the capacity to effectively communicate and even comprehend things that are happening on a day-to-day basis.
Even when I was out in, I had gone to a place, Pop and I, and I was okay. Pop was in the, you know, in there with mothers and whatnot there. And one of the kids was so cute, and she said, I like you. And I was like, you do? She said, you really nice. I love that kid. And she lives not far, you know, from, not here, but close by, yeah.
The toughest job, good days or bad days, is having a lot of patience. And it's very difficult for me because, you know, again, I'm coming off of a job after 30-some, almost 40 years of expectations of staff, etc. And perhaps, you know, a lesser degree of tolerance. Now I have to have an extraordinary amount of patience on a day-to-day basis, whether they're good days or bad days, because even in good days, you know, things slip through the cracks. You know, on the bad days, obviously it's 3, 4, 5 times as worse because, you know, the day could be long, and no matter what the interaction is, you find that, you know, she's unable really to understand what's taking place or to remember certain things. Simple things, you know, if I say to Nana, hand me the remote, she might hand me the telephone. Not be able to make the, you know, the visual and mental connection between the remote and the telephone, so forth. So it's patience throughout the day.
So, to get back to your question, I think we start off by trying to help the family, number one, educate them a bit about the condition. All right. Number two, to help the family members deal with their emotions as they see some of the symptoms and signs and deficits of their loved ones, because that can be very hard. You know, in the early stages, we do some things called memory retention. So we'll do special things to help a person. For instance, and you may know this already, but certain kinds of telephones, sometimes we have either magnetic boards or whatever with reminders of different things. So it helps people, you know, consistency and continuity, meaning if you put your keys one place, keep it there all the time. You know, make sure there's a special place for it. So it minimizes, you know, the person forgetting where things are. Okay. I think one of the other big things and one of the other big challenges has to do with being honest with the person. Okay. While on the one hand you want to be supportive, but sometimes it, given certain behavior issues, you have to be kind of honest with the person that they did forget this. or that this didn't happen the way they said it happened, or they're perseverating, meaning they're talking about the same thing over and over and over again, which is another symptom of this too. So you
The biggest effect it's having on me is looking at the changes my both parents are going through. My mother, who has Alzheimer's, and seeing how her day-to-day routines have changed, how our conversations with each other has changed, how the little things that she could, that she would just do, without even thinking about it, that were almost automatic, require, time and patience and help and, assistance in trying to get these things done. And then on my father, watching him as the caregiver, as the primary caregiver, just, looking at basically how he is dealing with, and probably sometimes not dealing with so well, the stress of being that primary caregiver. And he has, just as my mother does, good days and bad days. I would say those are probably the biggest changes that I've seen or noticed.
I mean, there's certain things that some of the research now points to that might be helpful in slowing down the process, like exercise, and certain diets may help a bit with slowing down the process. It doesn't stop it, it doesn't reverse it, but it will slow it down, which can be helpful. So helping families to do whatever can be supportive. Another area where often there's difficulty, and that is with the person who has the condition accepting that they may need help with certain things. Okay. Some people who have the condition, it's blatant that they can't do certain things, but they will refuse to acknowledge that they can't, and also refuse to accept any form of help around that. Try to inform the person prior, and that may or may not work depending on what the stage they may be in. But if you say, for instance, I'm going to be right back, I'm going to the bathroom, or I'm going downstairs to get something to eat, I'll be right back, would you want me to bring you something, etc., etc. So you want to be as clear and as concrete as you can be about what you're doing, so that the person who may have difficulty understanding has a better opportunity to understand what's going on. And they may or may not, even when you say that, but at least you've done what you could to let them know that, I'll be right back. Sometimes there's fear of being alone, and I think the point you made speaks to a developmental, how should I say, developmental step that very young infants go through. It's called object constancy. So babies, for instance, before they develop the cognitive skills to know that when I can't see mommy, she's still there. She may be in another room, she just may be out of my eyesight. But a lot of infants panic because they don't understand. So if they don't see you, you're gone. So sometimes, I don't know if you've ever heard the term, once a man, twice a child. You ever heard that before? Mm-hmm. Okay, you know what that means. Okay, so there's a regression back to almost childhood in terms of certain abilities or lack of abilities. So yeah, to be, again, as clear, as honest, as concrete as you can be. Okay? You want to help the person not to panic. Okay? To feel reassured that, whatever their fear is, it's not a real fear, because you're not going anyplace.
Well, initially, when the doctor, after the initial evaluation at Columbia University, the Neurological Institute, was done in December of '09, we got the results January, a month later, January 2010. And at the time when the doctor, gave the prognosis, et cetera, diagnosis and prognosis, and used the term Alzheimer's, it was when we walked out of the room, Nana was very, very, very upset. That's when the light came on, because I guess at that point she thought about her mother and so forth. So she was upset for several days, as a matter of fact, over that reality. Had the term dementia been used, I think it would have been a little bit easier, maybe because the term dementia, it seems to be a softer term, if you will. Because Uncle Terry had been diagnosed with dementia about a year and a half to 2 years earlier. But the term Alzheimer was, I guess, almost like having someone say to you, you have cancer. So it was very tough. In the months following that, in the spring, we didn't have much conversation about it. 2010 was a tough year because, you remember, our good friend Mr. Bryan passed away, and a few other folks passed away a couple of months later. But it was just a slippage of memory, and it seemed like she just probably blocked it out. And we really didn't have any conversation about it throughout most of 2010, other than her thinking that she just had some forgetfulness and so forth. Now, a couple of things. One is Nana's lifestyle was like her mother's to a large extent, pretty much centered around the family, almost exclusively around the family, and maybe a couple of close friends, if you will. And the other issue is that, her mother didn't come down with that condition even in the early stages until she was about 80. And then it was just seen as forgetfulness, and, forgetfulness, progressed into something else later on. But with Nana, I guess what I try to do is to keep her engaged on simple things that she can comfortably identify with. Again, always trying to be mindful, and it's difficult, but always try to be mindful of the lack of cognitive skills that she has in comprehending a lot of things. When she's in and around the family, in the early years of 2010, latter part of 2010, mid to latter part of 2010, she was still in pretty decent shape, other than, mechanical skills were beginning to fade away, obviously, and the short term was going. But I was still working to the latter part of 2010, so, I was cutting my days short and coming in early, but she was still fairly active. She would still go out to the church. A couple of her friends were frequent flyers, if you will, and I kept a close vigil on her throughout the day. If she was going to go somewhere, she would normally call me on the job and say she was going somewhere and so forth. Yeah. We used to travel a lot, and it was just a matter of taking a weekend up to Connecticut or going up to Canada. We always had fun, I'll say, on the road. Whether it was the Bahamas or Puerto Rico or VI, you know, and we still talk about, you know, some of those junkets, and she remembers some better than others, of course, and so forth. But you know, we've been together for over 40 years, and that's a lifetime. And you know, when you realize now that when you go somewhere, it doesn't have anywhere near the same significance. Like, for example, last April of 2011, we went to Vegas. And Natalie used to love to go to casinos, etc. Really tried, but you could see that she was not able to bring her full self into the excitement and the enjoyment of it. You know, little bits and pieces of things happened that was really great, but the casino stuff, which is something that she was crazy about, one, she was confused. Even in playing the slot machine, she was confused in terms of not having the recollection of how to read some of the machines, et cetera, et cetera. So the trip was painful for me, and yet at the same time, you know, there were pleasant moments. Went to a couple of the clubs and saw some entertainment, etc. You know, music of yesteryear. Some of that was reminiscent and brought back memories for her and so forth. But it's just not the same going out now. You know, I have to try to create something almost daily to keep her engaged. You know, 2 days ago, the weather was nice. We went down to the East Village, had lunch, and stopped by to see Uncle G for a hot minute because it was just a nice day. We were in that area. You know, I try to get out of, with the exception of bad weather, literally every day. But you know, there's only but so much you can see and do within locality, and I'm always concerned about going too far by myself. God forbid I should get sick or fall ill. You know that. You know, should have a fallback position. So that's always a constant concern that I have in terms of when we travel, just the two of us, what distance and where we go and so forth. So these are things that, just for informational purposes for you, that cross my mind on a pretty regular basis, going down the pike a little bit. You know, right now, you know, it's springtime, so everybody feels good in the spring. Flowers are growing. But as the kids say, it is what it is. And, you know, I go one day at a time, and I don't have any problem. My only problem in closing is trying to keep my stamina up. Because no one's going to do for her what I'm going to do for her. And I'm very aware of that, and it's just a matter of trying to keep enough